Welcome, everyone. We are here in another one of our Why I Became an Astrologer series, but this one's a little bit different. Today, or this morning in London time, and this afternoon, or late this afternoon here in Australia, I've got the lovely Alex Trenoweth with me, and she is a very, very well-known astrologer across the globe. And I think in 2015 you were the International Astrologer of the Year or something. Didn't you win an award for something along those lines?
I did, and it was
Yes.
really the start of my international um, career as an astrologer in,
Yeah.
in India.
In India. It's even better. But what we're going to be discussing today is literally it's to do with, astrology in education and all of the stuff like safeguarding and child development. And this is really an open discussion. I think Alex and I are going to cover a few points. People may or may not be aware, but the International Academy of Astrology um, still runs, but it hasn't been running for a number of years, not since I've taken it over, an education area where we support children and we teach under strict guidelines. We teach children about astrology and teach them how it works and taking those paths. But at the moment, simply because of the changes that have been going on and the fact that our lovely Alex is based in London, that sometimes getting live classes, which is quite important, especially when mums and dads have to be there as well, being able to run those classes all at the same time has been a little bit of a logistical thing. But that said, I'd like to introduce Alex, and my first question to her was, can you give us a bit of background on how you came to being in this situation where you're pretty much an advocate towards astrology and children, but give us a bit of background on yourself, your teaching, your books you've written and everything else. Just for those who don't know you, there probably shouldn't be too many that don't, but I reckon.
Well, I've been a teacher, a classroom teacher, pretty much for most of my adult life. And in 2013, I wrote my first book, which was called Growing Pains, Astrology in Adolescence, because I was working with high school students, 11 years old to 18 years old here in the UK. And I discovered that, or maybe I didn't, maybe discover is the wrong word, but I worked out that Jupiter is the planet of learning.
Mhm.
And it really helped me to understand how my students learn by focusing on creating activities and um, scaffolding certain topics that would really help my students sort of streamline how they learn. And I wrote this book, and it, like I said, it came out in 2013, and it was my intention that it would be something that would support teachers and parents. Now, what actually happened over the next couple of years was I discovered that there were some questions around, there's always been questions. Should I read children's charts? That's always been a case in astrology. And things have changed a lot
Mhm.
in the past 20, 25 years in terms of child protection. I never thought it was an issue. I thought everybody knew that you should never do one-to-one readings with children under the age of 18. And I know that there are going to be 17-year-olds that are going to be like, but I'm fully grown, I'm an adult or whatever. But by law, under 18 is a child. And I'm sorry, that's going to offend a few people,
Yeah.
but that is the truth. You can't go into a bar and order a drink if you're under the age of 18. That is the law. There are lots of laws in place that protect children. And it's interesting to look back in history to see how society has created these laws to protect children from exploitation. We see it a lot in the Victorian laws. Children used to work in factories back
Yeah.
in the late 1800s.
And in the
Um,
mines.
um, Chimney sweeps,
Yeah.
uh, match factory children, all these jobs were there. And let's talk about films. We protect children from scary films. Dawn of the Dead, or Night of the Living Dead. Sorry, Night of the Living Dead was
Yeah.
released on general release on a Saturday matinee, and it traumatized children. So now we realize, okay, now we have to say this is an R-rated film. This is a PG rated film. We protect our children, and so it's the same sort of journey in astrology too. We just need to be aware that
Yeah.
when we work with children's charts, we can't work with them one to one, and we should always have the parent with us. And in my turn to my own practice, I always start with parents first. They're always surprised about this. They hand me their child's chart. They got a troublesome 13-year-old. Here's my child's chart, fix it. And I always turn it around and say, actually, we'll start with you.
Yeah.
Let's look at your Saturn before we start with the child's chart. So I think that um, as a teacher, I've taught 50,000 British school children in my
Yeah.
long and illustrious career. So, I have a lot of practice. And every year I have to top up my safeguarding child protection training. I can't just jump in and teach. I have to be trained every single year. And that is the law. That is how it works here
Yeah.
in England. I also have to have police clearance, and I have to pay for that. That piece of paper that says I've never committed a crime in my life. And so therefore, I'm saying that the majority of astrologers do not have this kind of experience and should not be hanging their shingle saying they can work with children's charts or family charts. They have to have experience in doing so.
Yeah. Well, look, that's a really important thing as far as I'm concerned. It's one of the reasons why I haven't really been out there sort of pushing or pulling classes together to teach astrology to children. And one of those reasons is that what Alex has just brought up. There are some quite a few laws, and you could say they're not restrictions. That's probably the wrong word for it. But there's guidelines, there's safety guidelines that need to be followed, and you need to make sure that anybody who's going to be teaching children follow those guidelines. It's not to say that the kids can't have an interest in astrology. One of the things I did notice, and I think I talked about it in another one of these the other day, is that I know for a fact that I know people who are probably now would be in their 70s, I would say. One particular person who's in their 70s told me that when she grew up in Greece and she lived in a mountain village, that part of her schooling, they taught astrology. They taught about the planets. They talked about the signs. They talked about the influence of the moon. And it was part of their actual curriculum that they were taught in primary school, of all things, like before they even went to high school. And it was covered as part of the education. So there are aspects and things that obviously I believe, the kids would benefit from knowing from an astrological point of view themselves and understanding, their nature, why they feel a certain way. Do you want to highlight on sort of the benefits, I suppose, of introducing children to astrology? That's probably a good point to focus on. And how, in the past you've been able to help them, or, maybe give us a couple of examples of things that you've seen, as a result of it.
Okay, a few things. I mean, because I'm an astrologer and I'm in a classroom, I always find a way to squeak astrology in, or astronomy. It's just a much more safer sort of platform. We always talk about the visible sky. Here is, if you look outside, there's Venus conjunct the moon, or Jupiter conjunct the moon. You can see these things. Phases of the moon and eclipses are part of the science curriculum. Now, where the school curriculums and astrology curriculums collide is when we make predictions, which cracks me up. Okay,
Yep.
because as a teacher, I have 280 students on a two weekly rolling rota.
Yep.
280 students. Now I have to predict grades for those students every half term, every 6 weeks. So we are talking about thousands of predictions that I make as a teacher. And those predictions I make as a teacher can do far more damage than anything I can say as an astrologer. I can ruin a parent-child's relationship on parents' evening.
Yes,
Your
you could.
child doesn't do their work, hasn't turned their homework in. They're not going to pass English. That can destroy a family relationship.
Yeah,
It doesn't, not just a parent and child, it reverberates towards the siblings as well. I can determine which stream a child gets into. I can determine whether or not a child gets into sixth form or the sixth form of their choice, just by the things that I predict as a
yeah.
teacher. Whereas, am I really going to make a prediction for a child based on astrology? Do I have the time to do 280 birth charts?
No,
No,
not at
I
all.
don't. Of course not. Of course not. And but that is how the world at large views astrology, that we make predictions. And so it's not about that. What I use astrology for when I'm teaching is how a child learns.
Yeah.
And it sits alongside my skills as a teacher. It doesn't stand alone. So I am aware of, okay, I got Jupiter and Libra students. They're not likely to want to argue about things. I
No.
need to strengthen that skill. I have a Jupiter and Sagittarius students. Well, they say the strangest things and they don't back it up with facts. There's something I need to strengthen. I'm teaching Jupiter and Scorpio students. Maybe we don't want to go there. Their idea of seeing God is skating close to death. And they want to, go into all the really deep, dark subjects. How limited am I with that in the classroom? I'm very limited, actually. But there are things that I can do that will support that child's learning. And I have learning assistants that can help me as well. So we can actually bolster the things that the children find difficult to, the skills that children find difficult to learn.
Yeah, well, this would have
That's
been
how I
part
use
of
astrology.
this would have been part of the reason you wrote your book. Even like one of the more recent ones, Zeus on the Loose. It was all around the Jupiter relationship to each of the years, basically that you're educating, correct?
Yes, it's more to do with cycles, which
Yeah.
Saturn and Jupiter. It's about understanding the learning cycle. So for Jupiter, every 3 years they come to a transiting harsh aspect, and
Hmm.
that is a time where they have to make decisions about where they're going to go in life and how they're going to learn. Squares and oppositions force us to make a decision because we can't hold that tension. It's too uncomfortable for us. We have to decide how we're going to resolve that dilemma that we're facing. And similar with Saturn. Saturn's every 7 years.
Well,
And
it's amazing, isn't it, when you say that? Sorry to butt in, but I was just noticing something that I hadn't really noticed before, and what you just described, and that is, you think about just going through. I think go back to school, and in 3 years, I start off in kindergarten. This is in Australia. I go to first class and second class, and then I go up a level. I go from infants into primary, and that's a square. I'm now going from being the big kid to being the little kid on the block and having to make an adjustment. I'm then there for 3, 4, 5, and 6, and it's about 4 years. So all of a sudden that makes up the 7. And then I've got a major adjustment. I'm off to high school. So not only do I have, and then you've also got that 3-year bracket. When you go into sixth class in primary school, you've got another adjustment because you're now taking on the responsibility of being the eldest in your school, and you have school captaincy. You have all those things that come in, and then you start that process again when you go into year 7 or first form, and the whole thing starts again, and you've got another cycle. So interesting, that makes a lot of sense to me in regards to just development as a human being, that this is the early stages of it, and those school years and developmental cycles are really active. And to be honest, I hadn't not actively looked at it that way, because you know why? As you said, it's not typical. I'm sitting there reading a child's chart. It's usually the adult.
I think because we do things slightly different here in England, but at around the age of 11, a child has to be 11 on the 1st of September to start secondary school.
Yes.
And that is a Jupiter return. And I tell
Yes.
parents, that is the most important year of a child's life. And the way we treat children of that age here in England is we kind of forget about them. We're focusing on the exam years, on the Saturn opposition, 14 to 15-year-olds. We're focusing on getting them through their exams. And we kind of let the year 7s and year 8s, 11, 12, 13-year-olds kind of just do whatever they want to do and act as, whatever they want to do. And we just focus on the exams. And I think that's wrong, because what's happening is the brain development is going on for those younger adolescents. And so they're learning the habits of a lifetime. And so what we're actually teaching them is to skive, do whatever you want to do, forget about it, and just focus on your exams when you get there. And I think that's wrong. And this is where we need parents to help us to support the child's learning. A foreign holiday is great. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, you can't take a child out of school, not here in England anyway, but you can do things to encourage looking at different cultures, looking at a different language. We make children learn, take a modern foreign language in year 7. They don't have to when they get a bit older, but we encourage them
They
to
have that
learn different
option. Yes.
languages. And in London, a lot of students are already bilingual. English speakers are different, EFL learners already, because they come from different countries, because
Yeah.
we're very diverse here in London. So I just encourage, parents to really focus on your 11, 12-year-olds. Don't ignore the elders. I didn't say that.
No.
I'm saying, really allow that 11, 12-year-old to really explore the world and get to know, widen their horizons. That's our job, I think, as parents and teachers, is to hold doors open to learning.
Mm. So for those who don't understand astrology or don't know that much, there'll be a few people watching this that obviously do already. What you've just described, and you mentioned it, they're going through a Jupiter return. Do you want to explain to some people how or what is the Jupiter return effect on students that are going through? You just got touched on a number of things there, but what is it? I mean, to me, it's an expansion. It's a whole circle. You're going through a growth. You're coming to an understanding. You've finished a cycle and you're about to step out into a new one. But do you want to sort of expand on what you've seen, how that works in your students as such, and the effects that it has?
Well, 11, 12-year-olds are starting to go through puberty. They're making that transition between childhood and adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole host of issues that go around that. A big piece of advice I give to parents is, talk to your children about sex and sexuality at that age, because when they get to be 13, there are different astrological things going on. They have the first Ptolemaic aspect from an outer planet, Uranus sextile Uranus, and that changes the whole entire way that they relate to authority figures. They stop listening to teachers and parents and start listening to each other. And trust me, you do not want your child learning about sexuality from another child.
Yeah.
You want them coming from a position of authority. You want to have firm boundaries in place. And for, parents, the smallest issue becomes a big issue when that child hits puberty. The example I love to use is, say that you are from a different religion to your partner. You come from a Catholic background, but your partner comes from the Salvation Army, who are teetotalers. Now you think, oh, that's not going to make a big difference until your child reaches the age of 13 and alcohol becomes a discussion point. Of course, a Catholic parent is going to be, it's fine. We use it in religious ceremonies. And the Salvation Army parent is going to be like, well, no, we know we're not going to do that. Therefore, you got a conflict. Now, what teenagers are really good at is finding the chink in the armor between the authority figures
exactly
in their life.
Right.
They can find the weakness and they'll press the buttons and cause problems between the parents, right? Mom says it's okay. Dad says it's not. That's a problem. So to talk about these things, before the child reaches that age, where do you stand on these issues? Where do you stand on abortion? Where do you stand? And talk to your children.
Very
about
important
these
points.
issues.
Yeah, and they're really important points to have those conversations before they hit that age, and it's in your face. Yeah, because when it's in your face,
that's when in your face.
Yeah, and that's when they're going to start making those as you said, divisive comments and behaviours that pin one parent against the other, and all of a sudden you've got some other level of issue because we know what Uranus its natural thing is to break free, to be independent, doesn't really want to listen to authority, and then after that you've got the Saturn opposition that kicks in around 14 or 15, and that's when they truly have their first breakaway from authority. So I don't know about you over there in the UK, but here in Australia, I know of a number of schools, especially private schools, that actually send their year 9, which is the 14, 15-year-old students, primarily girls, not always boys as well, but they usually have, I know one school that actually sends all of their girls away. The whole of year 9 disappears. They go and live literally on site in another location, like they're off to boarding school. Out in the country, and they do different things. They literally remove them from the school because they're usually considered the most disruptive year within the whole school. So while they're going through that big emotional change, they take them out and teach them, different types of ways of doing things. And I think it works quite effectively. I'm not sure, but from what I've heard from parents associated, they think it's one of the most best things their kids have ever done. Do you have any sort of radical scenarios like that schools are doing in the UK?
I'm glad you asked that question because it goes back to the brain development. Girls develop before boys.
Mm-hmm.
That is, I know gender issues are a touchy subject. I had gender issues too when I was growing up, but girls do develop before boys. And I know this is touchy, but I think that the genders should be separated wherever they feel comfortable
Mm-hmm.
during that stage, because boys mess around in class and girls want to get serious because they're more mature. And the boys' height of humor, pinging bra straps, commenting about body hair, that is their sense of humor. Whereas girls, of course, are mortified by
Yeah.
this. So I do think it's a good idea to separate the boys from the girls. Girls need to get used to their cycles. They need to be with other women. They need to understand strengths in themselves. And then once this really turbulent time is finished, of course, bring them back together again so they can, learn how to socialize in society. And I'm not down on single sex schools, all
Yeah.
the way through. I'm just
No.
saying for this particular time, I think that boys and girls should at least separate. And it's the same for boys. I think boys need to be with men to understand, what it is to
Yeah.
to be a man in this world. And there's all sorts of different and difficult scenarios, with toxic masculinity and things like that.
Yeah.
There are ways that we can, support women. We also know, at least here in the UK, that girls repeatedly outscore boys on exams. We
Mm-hmm.
know that all girls' schools do better than all boys' schools on exams. And so the idea is that, mixed schools support the boys, but not necessarily support the girls.
Interesting observation. So when we bring that back to astrology and we're talking about teaching, because Alex, primarily from what I understand, when you have been teaching what I call kids astrology, but in actual fact it's adolescent really, you focus probably mainly between ages of about 11 and 18. So those secondary school years. Would that be correct?
Yes.
And why do you feel that that's probably, I mean, I look at it and I can see it's to me, that's an important one because people are starting to question, they're starting to want to know more. And you're going to find, especially nowadays, we had this conversation the other day in one of these, why I became an astrologer meetings where, who said it? They said, I now have people just going, oh yeah, astrology. Yeah, not a problem. It's part of my life. Whereas, when we were growing up, most people would not have been mentioning that was part of their life. Do you know what I mean? It was still considered, what do you mean? Oh, so you're a Capricorn. And really anyone ever knew was sun sign astrology and that was about it. But now I'm finding, and you said it before, 17-year-olds that might go, hey, I'm already an adult. But legally they might not be. But 16, 15, 17-year-olds, and especially when you talk about women or girls who are more mentally and emotionally mature at that age, then they take some of these topics more serious. I'm finding a lot more of that, and that's part of the reason I wanted to have this conversation because, I know from when I teach, there's the majority of people who, study astrology, whether we like it or not, are female. I just tend to find that, and it's probably anywhere from a 70 to 30 ratio, anywhere up to a 80 or 90% ratio sometimes. A lot of the classes we teach. I look at Astro College now, and I've just brought in two new teachers who are one's bringing their skills in Jyotish astrology, Aswin, who's obviously he's male, and then I've got Reuven, who's based out of the Philippines, who learnt with Elena Lumen, and he's coming in to teach more horary as well, but he's also learning the curriculum to learn and teach the natal studies classes. So I'm bringing but prior to that, I had no men in the college at all. Now, I'm not being sexist by doing that, because I've also brought in another woman as well. And we've got bunch of people. So I'm not in any way, shape or form. It's just purely about skills and skill set. But I can't get away from the fact that there is a vast majority or an outnumbered amount of ladies that want to either learn or are interested in astrology more so than men. And this has obviously been a bit stereotypical. However, I'm finding a lot of young teenage boys and girls, but even young adult men, in their 20s into their 30s now, the Pluto and Sagittarius generation, I call them, as well as the Uranus Neptune conjunction generation. Those male component, parts of the community are going, no, I look up my astrology. I'm quite into my astrology. I think it all works. I want to know more about it. I want to know how it's going to affect my finances. Tell me, teach me. So the world's changing. And I think that's why right now, this whole idea of introducing astrology to children or adolescents, I should say, probably more so, at a younger age, I think is going to grow. Would you agree? Do you think there's going to be more and more people going, I want to know more. You tell me about it. Are you finding that yourself?
Yeah, and I think we talked about this a little bit earlier. Now, what we need to be careful of is we're not overloading children,
Yes.
because they have their own curriculum to deal with in school, the compulsory education that they need for
Yes.
living a life. Now, I'm an astrologer too, so I know that astrology has taken over my life, but I'm an adult and I can cope.
Yeah.
But with our children, we have to be careful that we don't give them something that's going to go down the proverbial rabbit hole, that's going to distract them away from their mandatory studies. So we have to be careful about that.
But would you not compare that to, say, something like, somebody who's good at sport? They've got an interest in sport, and they spend most of their mornings going off and they're swimming every morning, or they're going off to their football practice, or somebody who's going off to ballet practice, and they've got a talent, a skill. So are you thinking that, if I'm sort of focusing more on, I think there's going to be a element as we go into the next 10 years of adolescents who are going to go, no. If they had a choice in college or school, they'd go, can I study astrology? They'll put their hand up. That's how I feel it's going a little bit more. So
yeah, I think you're right. I think that's correct. But what do we tell children that are really into their sports? You need to have a backup plan.
That's right.
You're not going to be the next David Beckham. I'm afraid to tell you, you're going to have sports injuries. Your career as a sports person probably isn't going to last beyond 25, 26. Have a backup plan. That's generally what we say. We're not trying to kill their dreams, but we're also trying to be realistic.
Yes, exactly.
Say, so with astrology, I think that I think astrology can sit perfectly well alongside of the national curriculum with maths. Astrology is geometry, right?
Yep.
Trigonometry, it's all in there.
Yeah.
It's to do with developing your language skills. It's to do with developing your people skills. There is so much about astrology that fits nicely inside of the national curriculum. And I think that's what we're trying to create here with IAA. We're trying to create something that sits beautifully alongside what they already know and what they've already learned.
That's right.
Astrology, you could bring in science, you could bring in history, you could bring in the cycles, the mundane cycles, all speak about history. That's a beautiful, that's the only hook I had into history, was looking at mundane cycles.
Yeah. So that astronomical stuff is great. There's a lot of, and there's the physics of it all. There's so much that can be done. I mean, one of the things, I find people want to go into, a medical profession or a social working profession or a clinical psychologist profession. Astrology will add another layer of value to understand people, human nature, how people respond, what they're going through, what's affecting them. So what I'm sort of thinking is that I just feel, Alex, that in the next, and I say over the next 10 years, maybe it's going to be 20, but there will be an increase of younger people, the younger generation, not just poo-hooing astrology, thinking, oh, well, that's just sun sign stuff. That's what I read in the newspaper, which has probably been one of my biggest bugbears, because technically, and those have heard me say it before, I got into astrology because I was one of those that didn't believe it.
Yeah, me too. Exactly.
Yeah.
I thought it was a load of crap.
Yeah.
And I never, ever in my long career as an astrologer never aspired to be a sun sign columnist. That
Yeah.
never, ever came into my my goals in life.
No. Well, I got to say that I was one for about 8 years.
That paper. And I just think, why would I want to spend so much time writing something only for it to end up lining a birdcage?
Yes.
Right? That's what happens with newspapers. It lines up birdcage. Why would I want to write something that ends up, just being thrown away?
Yeah.
I want to write something that lasts, or make an
impact.
Make an impression.
Yes, make an impression. Leave a lasting impression. Well, that's one of the things that I'm aspiring to do with Astro College here, and that is to create, I would say, very good curriculum that's focused towards primarily adolescent education, I would say. I don't think you can have some fun stuff with younger children, but generally speaking, if we're going to go down the path of doing it, we discussed earlier the possibility of, say, making some recorded classes that go through a lot of how astrology works and building people into the understanding, and shorter lessons, because that way they can do it in their own time and they can focus on small amounts of information at a time. And I do intend to go down the path of having that and making that available probably over the next 12 months, so that people can utilize that for their adolescent kids. And then from there, if they wanted to, or they found it was very interesting, they can use it in another way. Then, once they become eligible, they can always come along and study. It's not really an issue. But from a point of view of live classes and things like that, do you want to just run through? This is also for the benefit of astrologers. This is what is involved in the safeguarding, what the expectations are, the legal expectations, the protective expectations. Do you want to just take us down that road a little bit and explain why it's important to follow those guidelines?
Well, I mean, I kind of despair for the whenever I hear somebody. I work with children's charts. I kind of get this alarm bell going off.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why that is because, okay, let's go down. Let's think about a scenario. Say you have a mother coming to you. I want you to read my daughter's chart. And you're reading the daughter's chart, and the daughter, in the course of the conversation, discloses she's pregnant. She's underage, by her brother. Okay, let's just make it really bad. These are the sort of things that teachers often deal with in child protection. We deal with these extreme scenarios. So the astrologer thinks, okay, now I have the confidentiality arrangement. I can't say anything to anybody, so I'm not going to say anything to anybody. And now the girl eventually has to disclose that she's going to have this baby by her brother. And, oh, but I told an adult. I told one of my 5 safe adults. And they name you as the astrologer. Now you're in trouble because you should have done something about it.
You got a mandatory reporting requirement. Yeah.
Say it again.
You have a mandatory reporting requirement for stuff like that.
But if you're an astrologer, you don't necessarily know that.
No.
Because you haven't taken the training.
That's right.
And this is my whole entire point. You have to take the training. And at the very least, you should have police clearance. And it doesn't matter if the parent is there or not there. Well, you should have the parent there. But, you still have to make the decision. Is the parent competent enough to follow through on this?
Yeah.
And this is something that's only going to come through experience and through training. Otherwise, you're not going to know. So I'm saying most astrologers do not have this training. They do not have the skill set to deal with these kind of problems. Nobody comes to an astrologer because things are good and easy. They come to an astrologer because there's a problem. And when a parent throws up their child's chart in your face and says, fix this, you have to know what to do and how to handle that situation. And like I said, my first reaction is you're going to sit in on this conversation. You're going to be there. You're going to be responsible. And I'm starting with you, mom or dad or whoever it is. And they're always shocked. What? My child's the problem. Well, I'm afraid, you're the responsible adult in this.
Yeah, they might be a problem, but you need to be aware of what's going on. So, and if the other thing is, from what I can hear there too, Alex, by having the parent there, it's also a safeguard for yourself. It's to make
Absolutely.
sure that
I meant to bring this up too.
Yeah.
Safeguarding. This isn't about safeguarding the child. It's also about safeguarding the astrologer.
Yeah, because it's like no different to anything. If you're sitting with a school counselor, the school counselor takes information on that's important, that's confidential, and the school counselor, however, is trained in how to deal with children. And I just touched on mandatory reporting requirements, and there are, and that's part of the decision making process that the person dealing with the child has you should say what's the word for it? Not only the ability to do it because they're trained in what they need to do, but they have to have the ability to make that judgment. And that judgment's extremely important. As an astrologer, me personally, I hear it all the time. People say, "Tell me about my children. Tell me about my kids. What do you think of this? What are they going to do?" Now, I've looked at people's charts, especially babies when they're born, and you can often see different things that come up. But I can, what you can do is you can give insight. Now, if it's a baby you're talking about, you can't have the baby. You're not talking to the baby. You're not reading the baby's chart, but you're telling the parents. But even in that instance, you still need to be quite responsible as to how and what you're going to say to them, because they carry that information through. They think that this is gospel, that this is what's going to happen to their child. That's also quite an issue, So
and and I think parents are so keen, because parenthood is such a huge responsibility. Parents are really keen to spread that responsibility onto somebody else.
Yeah.
You have to be able to say, "Oh, actually, you're the one who's closer to that."
Yeah.
And I'm all about astrologers being the mediator,
The mediation,
heaven and earth and all that kind of stuff. But also the parent is the person that's the closest. Now, you said something that really I wanted to come back to about baby's charts. Okay, so when you look at a natal chart, that is like a baby picture, and a person continues to grow
That's right.
throughout their lives. And I think the growth shows through Jupiter and Saturn, which I don't think most schools are actually very good at explaining what Jupiter is. They say, "Oh, here's Jupiter in Cancer. This is what it means," but they don't look at the growth cycles. And this is why I'm very keen in my own school to teach. Okay, here we go. Jupiter square, Jupiter opposition.
I think it's a great ability to do it. Wonderful way of looking at it. And then you've also got when Jupiter is in those signs, it's in a particular sign squaring its natal position, so it's going to have a certain impact, certain effect. Even generationally. I suppose this is what people, who don't know astrology need to understand. The good thing about when we deal with, say, Jupiter or Saturn, we're talking about them in a fairly generational sense. What we don't have, unless we've got the individual's chart, is what house or area of life it's affecting, or where it impacts, what houses it rules, and things like that, which add another layer.
And I always say about astrologers, we all speak the language of the sky, but we have different accents.
Yes.
And that's what makes astrology fascinating, is that, we have different ways that we've built on our learning of the basics, and we've branched out into different ways. I think we talked about this the other night, Susan Goodell.
Susan Goodell, yes. Yeah.
She said that, she knew immediately she wanted to be a financial astrologer. Well, I knew immediately that I wanted to work with children and families because of my chart. And I think that's really important for astrologers, is to know yourself first, know what you're good at, know what you want to do, and to build on that.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. It's really important to pinpoint what your strengths are. It also, that's part of what, Susan being a financial astrologer, that's what she bases a lot of her financial advice she gives via astrology on. She looks at someone's chart and sees what's going to bring them money. You know, if I'm going to give finance advice, what's going to create me an income? Where are my investments going to work from? What's the energy that says, it's a bit like saying there's no point in investing in something that's got a Venus relationship to it when my investment portfolio or my investment sort of outlook and income is all coming from Mars. It might be that, the classic example, where do I want to do what I want to do for a job? And this guy's built like a tradie. He's not going to go out there and become a florist. He might be better as a plumber. So, at the end of the day, what's going to make him more money? Where's his passion? Where's he aligned to? Or the other way around. So I totally get it. I 100% get what you're saying. What would you suggest coming up for, give me a little bit of background.
Okay, so let me divide it up a bit.
Yep.
So I teach in schools as a regular teacher.
Yes, we know that one.
I teach everything. I teach from year 3 years old all the way to 18. I work for an agency. I think we call it supply teaching in the UK. You call it substitute teaching, maybe?
Yeah, or relief teaching or substitute teaching. Yeah.
Yeah. So I call us Minutemen. We drop everything, go to teach. Someone else's curriculum. We're really good at what we do. We don't just sit behind a desk. We get involved. That's our skill set. Now, in my own school of astrology, I teach astrologers about child protection and safeguarding.
Yeah.
How you can use astrology, keeping your practice safe, but also supporting parents and children, which is so important, I think. But it has to be done properly. I am not a fan of people posting their child's chart and inviting people, come look at my child's chart.
No, I wouldn't.
And then having all these amateurs coming in and commenting who don't have the experience, you don't know who you're talking to. I find it very, very uncomfortable. So I'm trying to, teach astrologers how we can be really supportive, truly supportive of children and their parents.
Yeah, I think it's a very important role that you've taken on. And I think it's something, like you said, that a lot of people don't understand. I shouldn't say they don't understand the importance of. That's wrong. I think it's more that maybe they're not aware of the level of importance that it brings, and the implications by not following those guidelines. That might be the better way of looking at it.
And I find that astrologers are really, if you give them advice, if you tell them, hey, look, you're in over your head, they don't want to hear it.
No,
they want to dismiss you. They want to be like, but I know what I'm doing. I'm a parent. I got these skills. And it's like, no, you don't have those skills.
So if you were talking to astrologers about that, and you sort of, what do you think would be the ideal sort of, is what you teach at the moment? Because I'd like to get you on board to teach the same thing to astrologers, with Astro College. And I'm not talking about teaching adolescents themselves. I'm talking about teaching astrologers about these safeguarding and the guidelines. How long a course, when you run those, how long do they go for? And are they more of a workshop style, or are they over a period of weeks? What sort of time frame to get really across everything that needs to be done?
Well, my 9 weeks, my level 1 is basically the whole entire child protection thing, which we should keep updating every single year, which I do. Level 2 is 4 courses, which is basically me lecturing about the Jupiter, Saturn, and a little bit of homework, a bit of reading. Level 3 is four lessons. And that's a practicum, practicing the techniques I've taught you amongst the group that you're in. So it's about 9 weeks. And at the end, I still don't say you are qualified to work with children's charts. I still say, here's the boundaries, here's where you're safe, and here's where you're not safe. So it's a 9-week course, but it's as close as I can get you to being qualified within safeguarding and child protection without going to the government thing. So if you want to be qualified with safeguarding and child protection, there are government courses you can take. You definitely need police protection, which I can't give you either. But at least you're safe in your own practice, as far as I can take you.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Do you find that course would cross pollinate or cross reference across multiple countries' standards, or is it
Oh,
primarily
absolutely.
based
Yeah.
around the UK? Yeah, you mainly
No. These are international child
standards. Good. Okay.
safeguarded child protection practices. Um, yeah, people ask me this a lot. This is only in the UK that you can't teach one-to-one. No, it's international.
Yeah, that's
Don't
what I would
try
have
it.
thought. Yeah, yeah. I was pretty sure of that. Is there anything else you'd want to touch on before we finish up? Because I think what you've done has made it pretty clear. I think where I'm at would be you and I probably need to have a bit further of a chat. This is more because I would like to see these sorts of standards and this sort of curriculum offered through Astro College as well. And it's a matter of you and I maybe having a chat about how that would work, what could be made work. That's another thing, just on timeframes. Do you find that the only way you can really teach that correctly is with live classes, or is there a bit of a hybrid model they go and they could have a
I
recorded
think
class as well for certain components?
I think we could do independent study classes, but it would be just as much work as it would be for a live class.
Yeah, I
So
understand.
I would set you work to do, and you would have to do that work. And so that it could work. Um, yeah, I don't see why it couldn't work. I could adapt it so it would work.
Okay. All right. Well, that's great. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Alex?
No, I think that's we've covered a lot of things. I would just be, if you're a parent listening to this, please don't drop your child's chart into random chat forums. Please be careful
Yeah,
about that.
definitely not. Yeah.
That is something that you shouldn't be doing. And if you're an astrologer responding to these kind of things, please don't do it. You don't have the training to do it.
Do you find that that's a thing that people? Because I haven't been aware of too much, but it's very highly likely that parents have got their kids' chart and just dump them into a chat forum and say, "What do you think is going on with this?" Have you been experienced to that, or witness to
Yeah,
that?
I have. And I've seen um, astrologers who really are barely out of their teens, you know, hanging a shingle and saying, I can read children's charts. Let me read your child's chart. I've seen that too, which
No,
is really troubling.
that's
You
troubling. Yeah.
really, when you're working with children, I just don't understand where this thinking comes from. Just because a person is underage doesn't mean that they are an easy target. It should be the opposite way around. We
Yes,
should
I
be
agree.
doing more
Yeah.
as a profession to protect our vulnerable young people from this kind of stuff.
It's
And,
the old.
and that goes for young parents too.
Totally agree. I find it nearly really disconcerting to think that people would do that with their kids' charts, or even there's astrologers out there saying, "I'll do kids' charts like that." One of the things that I learned a long time ago, and I've always said this: the more knowledge you get, and uh, especially about the outcome of events, how a person's nature is, what's going on with them in general, and you learn those astrological techniques and you can work out how to interpret them, which it takes time. I've always said to people, if you're learning astrology, time is your friend, not your enemy. Because the more time, the more experience, the clearer things become. Things unfold. They show you patterns and how things work. When you've gone through as many Mercury retrogrades as I have in my life, you understand which ones are good, which ones aren't, how they're going to work, what tends to happen, how it affects you, how it affects others. That's an experience thing. You can read as many books as you like, but experience will give you that. And with that, I've always said, it's all about learning the lesson of Spider-Man's uncle. If you get into astrology and you're starting to be, going down that professional path, it's the old adage when he turns to Spider-Man, he says, Peter Parker, to Peter Parker, Peter, with great power comes great responsibility. And when you've got that level of power to influence or to talk to, and children, teenagers are probably, kids are bad enough. Teenagers are super impressionable. And you don't want to be mucking around with the, throwaway lines, or, oh, this is possible. Oh, you might end up that. Oh, you got no hope of doing that. Oh, no, you'll never succeed in that. Or, oh, no, you're going to win that. Or, it's the throwaway lines that there's a difference between encouragement and guidance versus you can set up or destroy somebody's self-esteem, their career options and everything else in a matter of an off-the-cuff comment. And it's really, really dangerous in that respect.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
So a lot more responsibility in the field and a lot more proactivity, I think, because I think OPA published my 4-part series on working with children's charts
Yeah.
a good few years ago. But as far as I know, other than IAA, no other organization or school. Oh, sorry, MISPA did my course as well. No other course or conference is taking this on.
No. Well, we'll continue to do that and continue to develop it. I've been, as you're aware, quite busy getting ready to launch and setting up a new website, setting up new astrology education programs. But I can only do one thing at a time. We're slowly getting around to it. But this is something that I've always wanted to, you are coming to Australia. For those that don't know, later this year, Alex is on a nice tour. She's coming down under to spend about 6 or 8 weeks here or something, you said, 5 or 6 weeks. And she'll be going to 4 or 5 major cities.
5. Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, Adelaide, Brisbane.
Yeah. So, and me being close to Adelaide now, I used to live in Melbourne. I used to live in Sydney. I used to live in Queensland. I just haven't lived in Perth. I've been there a lot. But, so when you were here, I'll be definitely spending a little bit of time. So what I'm thinking is we may even look at the idea, would it be something that, if we could get the numbers together, that we could set up some sort of live, get-together workshop class on this while you're in Australia in some of those capital cities.
Because we'll be on the same time zones, because it's really difficult to find out the right time zones, isn't it? It's always very late for me or very early for you.
That's right.
And
UK
sits very uncomfortably in the middle.
How did you go the other morning when you were up at 1 a.m. and, by the time we finished a very long conversation, because you said, oh, no, I've got Monday off, I'll be fine. I'm thinking the poor thing's going to get to bed at 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning.
3:30 or 4 o'clock. It did kind of mess up my sleeping schedule. This is why I keep my sleeping schedule so regular. I go to bed 10 o'clock. I'm winding down, and I'm up at 6.
Yeah.
So it did kind of screw it up a little bit, but I got a couple of days to get used to things again. So it'll be okay.
Sorry to do that to you, but you did throw yourself in the deep end.
I did volunteer. As you keep telling me, I did say
it was great to have you in. Yeah.
I wanted to do something because I haven't been because of the time zone. So I wanted to do that, and I was glad to be able to do it. So
yeah. All right. Well, look, I might stop the recording there, and I wanted to say thank you very much to yourself for coming along and doing this. I know we didn't have much time to actually advertise it. It is up on the website, so those will see this. And if they are watching it, they will be watching a recording because we basically recorded on our own today, which was great. All right.
Edit things.
I'm gonna stop the recording. Bear with me, and I would say thanks very much, Alex, for your time. Luke Bailey here, signing off, and we will be there for the next one. I think our next one coming up this weekend is why I became a vibrational astrologer. And vibrational astrology is a whole arm of astrology working on vibrations, obviously, and frequencies, which is a very new sort of research topic. It's not that new. It's based on harmonics, and I've always been interested in harmonics.
Oh, I love that.
And it is, when you talk about, just for those who don't know, when you talk about, if we all know that the Indians, the Hindus, the Jyotish, Vedic astrologers have been around for a long time. They still have a big, movement towards astrology. It's never gone away in India, and they use it on a very regular basis. Use it for a lot of planning for different events. But when you've got that Vedic chart, the Navamsa, which is the soul, so you've got your own personal chart, and then you've got your soul chart. But don't forget, they believe in reincarnation. So the soul that's coming through from previous lifetimes is the ninth harmonic chart. So it's a very interesting concept. So anybody who's interested in knowing about vibrational astrology, because in actual fact, it's just a branch of, we all need to know the astrology first, but it is a really good insight into breaking down and getting to the nitty gritty of how a chart's working. I've got Michelle Marie, who trained under Santino, who used to be known as David Cochran, but he has changed his name. And then we've also got Barbie, who's you met Barbie the other night, who's also trained under, I think it's Linda Berry. And so they'll also be heading up the new sort of vibrational astrology education area within Astro College coming up into later this year into 2027. So join us for that. I think it is, I can't remember. It's on the website. I think it's about the 13th or 14th. No, it might be. Yeah, no, it's only in a couple of days. I think it's on the 10th. Today's the 9th. I think it's on the 10th, which is our morning of the 11th. I'm pretty sure. I know it's Saturday morning for me, so it's in a couple of days' time. Join us for that one, and we will see you soon.